follow up on something that you discussed in your opening testimony. Now, there's members of the committee, primarily on the other side of the aisle, that are trying to claim that there's a few radical judicial activists standing in the way of President Trump's agenda. But just as in his first term, it seems that the president's disregard for the law is actually the biggest thing standing in the way of his agenda. So I want to walk through some of the statistics again with you. How many cases have you identified where plaintiffs are seeking an injunction or a temporary restraining order against the current administration where the judge has actually issued a decision, and in how many was the relief granted?
Sure. So, Senator, as of last Friday, and the data obviously has changed since last Friday, the total number of cases we found was 67, and there were 46 of those 67 in which the judge had issued either a temporary restraining order or a preliminary injunction or both.
Okay, that's a lot, and it sounds like a pretty good success rate in terms of the challenges. Now, how many judges have heard these cases, and if you're able to tell or even have a ballpark, these judges were appointed by a president of which party?
Sure. So it's 39 different judges appointed by 5 presidents of both parties, including 2 Republican presidents, President Reagan, President Bush. And the cases are not symmetrically distributed, but the success rate's pretty close. So of those 46 rulings against the Trump administration policies, 9 have come from Republican-appointed judges. And the success rate in those cases has been about 45–50%, so just a little bit lower than what we're seeing in the cases with Democratic-appointed judges.
Okay, that's encouraging to demonstrate that it's not a partisan lens with which these judges are acting. Now, when it comes to geography, can you speak to where these judges sit? Are they concentrated in one region, one appellate court jurisdiction, one district, or are they spread around the country?
It's been spread much further around the country than what we saw, for example, during the Biden administration. So we've seen 11 different district courts in the 46 cases that have blocked Trump policies, 11 different district courts in 7 different circuits, which is a pretty big shift from as recently as a couple years ago when most of the nationwide injunctions against Biden policies were coming from district courts in Texas, Louisiana, and Missouri.
So thank you, and appreciate your verification of some of the data that I have in front of me. To me, it confirms not just the numbers, but that it's not the judges getting in the way of the Trump agenda. It's certainly not a few radical judicial activists either. Now, question on a different topic for you. You're an expert on sensible ways to reform the judiciary to make it better work for the American people in a way that was intended by the framers of our Constitution. In your view, what are the most pressing reform needs when it comes to the federal courts?
Yeah, I think the most pressing needs, are to avoid the more general ability of parties to manipulate the federal courts in ways that we've seen, to some degree in administrations of both parties, but for various structural reasons, I think even more so during the last 2 Democratic administrations. Just to take one example, my friend Professor Bray, joins me in criticizing so-called single-judge divisions and judge shopping. That was a phenomenon we saw over and over again during the Biden administration. The only really sort of obvious target for that kind of behavior during the Trump administration, the district court in Massachusetts, changed its rules actually to prevent that kind of behavior. And it seems like that can be a model, Senator, for a nationwide rule that this body could impose to avoid the appearance that litigants are steering cases to a particular judge because of that judge's ideological commitments.
Yeah. No, and that's critical for the functioning of the judiciary and people's confidence in the process. Last question, in my time remaining, is sadly very timely because the attacks on the judiciary isn't limited to attacks on judges by the Trump administration. Now we're seeing attacks on the legal community and specific firms or lawyers that represent clients and causes at odds with the president's ambition. Can you speak to the chilling effect that these targeted executive orders are having on the legal community and their ability and willingness to take on clients or employees that might dare to disagree with President Trump?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing a chilling effect, Senator, in some of the law firms that are, making these agreements with the president to not represent particular clients, to devote hundreds of millions of dollars to pro bono litigation in support of the president's agenda. That kind of distortion is a problem not because of Democrats versus Republicans. That kind of distortion is a problem because, as the Supreme Court itself explained in 2001, meaningful access to lawyers is actually central to the ability of the courts to play their essential role in our constitutional system.
Thank you, Mr. Vladeck. We appreciate your testimony. Thank you, Senator Padilla.
Thank you. Just following up on that, I mean, is there agreement among